Welcome back to Views from the City. I'm your host, Busy J. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Busy J. Welcome back to Views from the City. And, I have to do this emergency episode. Just got back in literally from 2 blocks away at the King's Theater for the UFC 208 weigh-ins. Should be a phenomenal card tomorrow night at Barclays. The UFC returns to New York for its second card in about 3 months. So it should be a great time tomorrow night. But first, we got to address the home stuff first. The Views from the City, we talk about all things tri-state in sports and pop culture. And the first thing the only thing that really needs to be addressed right now is the debacle of the undoing of the New York Knicks franchise. It's bad enough that the Knicks have been irrelevant for the last 16, 17 years. There's a generation of Knicks fans. There's a generation of New Yorkers that have never seen the Knicks in the glory days, let alone winning a championship, but just being competitive. If you look at what happened from '99 when the Spurs took off and won their first championship to now, the Knicks and Spurs have gone in totally different different directions, and it's just sad because it didn't have to be like that. We all know the subline, what happened to Charles Oakley. It's unfortunate, but now the idiot owner wants to ban him for life. And it's just another sad state of affairs that's going on at the world's most famous arena. It's sad that the world's most famous arena is also home of the world's most disgruntled organization. If you just look at the history, if you just look at the track record from the Knicks, or not even just the track record of inconsistency of just poor executions, and not just basketball players, I'm talking about just operational mishaps. We go back from Isaiah Thomas and that whole sex scandal to Marbury and having to testify. They shipped Marbury out. We'll go back to Marv Albert, 2004. Marv Albert has been, he's the announcer for the Knicks, doing play-by-play commentating for many years. I mean, this is who I grew up with in the 90s, late 80s. Marv freaking Albert. So if somebody's been there for over 20-something years, and he just critiques a little bit. Mind you, this is before social media. This is before Twitter and all those things. He just had a little critique about the Knicks, and next thing you know, he's exiled. So now we fast forward to what happened the other night with Oakley. He was only there for less than 5 minutes, and security told him he had to leave by the owner's request. My thing is, he wasn't getting free tickets. He paid for those tickets. And he was only there for 4.5 minutes, and they felt the need to, drag him out there. Yes, Oakley should not have put his hands on security, but at the same time, he's a paying customer. He did not look intoxicated, as James Dolan came out later on to say that he believed he was, which is total BS. You could clearly see he was a little upset that folks was all in his face. And I just never understood that either. When you go to a public setting or a social gathering, why do you need 8 people to talk to one person? That's always going to come out as being, you're kind of you're trying to intimidate the person. And Oakley he's not a small dude. He's a big, tough boy, And now I feel personally the Knicks have they just put this black eye out there. Now everybody knows how disgruntled and no leadership accountability is going on in that organization. The PR send out that whole we hope he gets some help. That didn't sit well with a lot of the current players. And I've always been telling my friends from day one, nobody in their right mind is going to want to come to play to New York when you have the levels of idiocracy that's going on in terms of management. And, an organization is only as strong as the top of the food chain is. And the management is awful. It's just awful. The owner is awful. Hands down, the second worst owner in sports. Actually, no, he is the worst owner in sports. The other worst owner in sports, he lost his team, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to catch Dolan in any. We're not going to catch him slipping like that. But he's an awful owner, and this is why a lot of players don't want to come here. A lot of top talent don't want to come here. And when you got guys like LeBron James, D. Wade, Chris Paul, all tweeting in their support for Oakley, that's very telling. And for all you new New Yorkers out there, and let me tell you about Charles Oakley. Back in my days, in my teenage days, early 20 days, the Knicks were relevant. The Knicks were warriors, and they were led by Ewing and Oakley. Oakley was the enforcer. He wasn't a dirty player. He was a tough, solid SOB player. Just think of Stone Cold Steve Austin without the over popularity. That was Charles Oakley. He was out there getting the rebounds, making sure no one's coming to the lane with ease, things like that. And he pretty much, what I think personally what just happened, now he's going to be the face of the fans. He's going to be the face of the guy that's sitting in the bleacher seats or back 10 rows where they can't get near the owner, that's never been to a suit. Someone that's saved up some money to go to a Knicks game because Knicks ticket prices are insane. And let's be real, the only people that sits in the front row are celebrities. And if not celebrities, then you got corporations that invest and give out those tickets. You know, it's not for the average Joe anymore. Those days are gone. The average Joe, it's me and other people that are having a podcast or that are watching the game at home, if they can afford the NBA package where you can see all the games. Other than that, the average Joe is nowhere near the owner. So even if Oakley did rattle the owner up a little bit, so what? You're a billionaire. Toughen it up, you know. And it all goes back to the way the Knicks treated Patrick Ewing on the way out. First was Ewing. Ewing was he was the king of Gotham before Derek Jeter. New York City was Ewing's town because Ewing was that warrior. And now, the way they exiled him, they traded him for nothing to Seattle. And they never really brought him back in the fold. You look at Boston, you look at Lakers, they don't treat their players like this. The Spurs, they don't treat their players like this. But the Knicks, they just have this way of not welcoming back the past or welcoming back success. They have Allen Houston that works in the front office. But Allen Houston, he wasn't Ewing, that's for sure. Hell, he wasn't even John Starks. But you have Allen Houston and you have Larry Johnson. You welcome these guys back with no problem. But Ewing doesn't get an offer to be on the coaching staff or be a scout. Mark Jackson doesn't get a call to possibly be the next Knicks head coach when he was Rookie of the Year and a phenomenal Knick when he was a New Yorker. A native New Yorker at that. I feel like they just so out of touch of what's going on. And just don't say, I'm not just going to blame all this on Dolan. Oh, no. There's plenty of blame to go around in the New York's organization. Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is out of touch. He's lost his mind coming after Melo and trying to undermine him and try to get rid of him for for the lowest deal he can find. Phil is just trying to find a scapegoat to get out of New York. That's all he's trying to do. He wants out of here. But he wants to get his money as well. So he's just trying to pass the blame and seeing, hey, maybe Dolan would fire me and I could collect this $24 million for the next 2 years. Who knows? Dolan's an idiot anyway. So you got all that going on. And me and many other New Yorkers are fed up. And I feel like now they put Oakley out there to be the martyr. He's going to be the guy that represents the little guys like me and everybody else that really support the Knicks. So I encourage all you New Yorkers, all you Knicks fans out there, save your money. Don't go to Knicks games until they lift this ban on Oakley because it's ridiculous. You don't treat legends like that. You don't treat your former players like that. You just ban them and tell him he needs to get help. What kind of message is it? Own up, James Dolan. Own up and take some accountability for your actions. Just look at the product you put out there. The Knicks haven't made it to a conference finals in 17 years. You have one playoff series of victory in the last 16 years. They haven't made the playoffs in the last 3 years, and the way it's going right now, it's going to be 4. And that's just unacceptable. Your last winning head coach, you fired him on the year after he took you guys to 54 wins in the second round, and then you hire somebody with no experience in there and Derek Fisher, and then he does the stuff that he does off the court, and then you bring in Jeff Hornacek, who was also fired halfway through his season back in Phoenix. So I don't know what Phil's doing. Phil's not talking to the media. He hasn't talked to the media since September. He of all the deals he's made, he's only struck gold once in Porzingis, and you're undermining Porzingis' growth by not featuring him enough in the offense. I feel like, and I hate to say this, that the Knicks should not have re-signed Melo. They should have said, okay, we're gonna full rebuild mode. But since you didn't do that, you pretty much owed it to Melo and Porzingis to build around them, and you didn't. You got a ball hog centric point guard in D Rose. That's not the point guard the Knicks need if they want to compete. You needed somebody who's going to distribute the ball, get it to Porzingis in the good right spots, get it to Melo in good spots, not take the ball for himself and shoot 60% from the field, predominantly on layups, and drive into the hole. The Zen Master is a great coach. As a GM, as a president of operations, he is not so much. If anything, this election we just had in this country showed us you need some kind of experience to run anything. And I hope we get back to that. I hope somehow Phil Jackson does get fired. Dolan's a billionaire plenty of times over. He could afford to pay him out and get somebody here to run the organization properly. I tell my friends all the time, the Nets are in an awful situation, but at least they have direction. They have strong management in place now. The Nets are pretty much the Obamas taking over after the Bushes. Billy King was George Bush. He did something stupid and mortgaged the future, and we see what's going on right now. The Nets have the worst record in the NBA, and they're probably going to finish in top 3 in the ping pong. And Boston's only 2 games behind Cleveland for the number 1 seed. Boston could possibly be the number 1 seed in the East and have the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. That's unheard of. Thanks to Billy King, because he felt like, hey, if I get these old guys to mash up with Lopez and Darren Williams, maybe we'll have a shot at the Miami Heat back then. That didn't happen. Darren Williams was a bust. Pierce left after a year. Garnett was a shell of himself. And only Brook Lopez is still here. But to the Nets' credit, they have management in place to go forward. The coach is pretty good. The GM is good. And even though they have the worst record in the league, they're competitive in all their games. I've yet to see the Nets lose by more than 10 points all season. So it's not like they're awful because of talent standpoint. They just don't have enough talent. And I think going forward, the management will do what they got to do. It's a hole. Like I said, that's why I referred to the Obama taking over after Bush. When everybody was in a financial hole, but somehow, he put levers to patch up the hole a little bit. I think that's what's going to happen with the Nets. They're going to have to weather the storm for a couple of years, but at least you have a direction. If I was a free agent and had a choice between the Nets or the Knicks, I'm choosing the Nets because they have direction. They have leadership in place. They could sell me something. I don't know what they're selling people in the Garden. I have no idea. I think the only thing they sell to people in the Garden is the Garden. Hey, you could play at the Mecca. But if the Mecca is run by idiots, how much of a Mecca is it really? How much of it is really still a Mecca? You gotta ask yourself that question. I hope the Knicks turn it around. Like I said, I'm a huge diehard Knicks fan. I go back from '85. I go back from Rod Strickland, Mark Jackson, local talent that became Knicks. I go back from those days, and I hate to see what's going on to the franchise. I'm soon going to be 40, and to think the Knicks have been irrelevant for most of my adult life, it hurts. I still remember being 16, watching Game 7 of the '94 Finals. I thought that was the worst pain ever. Nope. Watching the Knicks go through what they're going through for the last 16 years eclipsed that pain. I will take Starks going 2 for 19 any day of the week over what's going on right now because it's just awful. Shout out to my man Carmelo Anthony. He's been